So you're not using your spot metering mode because you think it's absolutely challenging, technical difficulties, so on and so forth. I'm going to tell you, it's the best way to tell a story that your audience loves. So let's break down spot metering and let's make it easy. Hey guys, this is 𝐬𝐃𝐄𝐒. I'm a fashion and a wildlife photographer. After shooting fashion for so many years, fashion magazines, designers, shooting a lot of fine art wildlife photography, I have to tell you that we must make photography easy, simple, not so challenging and not so difficult. If we try and simplify things in our brain first, everything else will fall in place. Let's make photography easy. If you break it down to its words, so to speak, spot metering. Basically, you are measuring a spot that is on your photograph. You're measuring a spot that is reflecting X amount of light which the camera is measuring, meaning your spot meter is measuring. That is spot metering, as simply put at that. Now, how much of the spot your camera is measuring, that is something that you have to look into your camera manual or your camera manufacturer. Every camera manufacturer has a different size that the camera measures. So whichever camera you're using, look into the manual or call the camera manufacturer, they will let you know. I also want you to know that the spot where you focus is very small compared to the spot where your camera measures. Your camera measures a little bit more than what you are focusing on. So if you've put your spot metering on your focusing point is smaller. So don't be fooled by that. Let's see what spot metering does and how you can tell a story which is going to be a story of your frame, means your photograph, and people get into it and see the entire story. Let's see how it does it with spot metering. I think if you take an evaluative metering, it takes everything, mushes everything together, bang, you go. But when you're taking a spot meter, you're measuring just that one little spot. Now you know what that spot is. So you, as a photographer telling the story to your audience, is going to decide whether that spot should be X amount of light on it, means what exposure you want on that. And if you want your background to be a different measurement, then you meter that and then you meter the other side and you say to yourself, okay, you know what, I want my main subject to be this and I want my other. So basically you are playing with the frame, and in the frame your job as a photographer is to direct the audience to what you want them to see. And in order for you to do that, you're going to make it brighter or you're going to make it darker. And spot metering gives you precise measurements on what it's measuring. So you as a photographer can make the decision and change it around to your liking, to your audience. So that's why for me, spot metering is the absolute best way of metering. I've always measured with spot metering. And let's see how it works in fashion spot metering, and then let's see how it works in wildlife as well. Let's first go to an image that is fashion. It is a very challenging metering shoot, so to speak, right? And why is it? Because the model is wearing black and she's wearing white. If you go and you measure the black turns gray because that's what the camera does. If you go to the white and you measure the white turns gray, right? Because that's what the camera does. In fashion, especially in the editorial world, it becomes very challenging to get 8 different shots in 8 hours, which means we got to light breakdown 8 times in order to achieve that. So she comes into frame and I'm saying to myself, I've already told my assistants that I want this to be at 5.6, this to be at 6.3, and I want my model to be the brightest. But if I measure the white, it blows out. If I measure the black, that becomes a problem as well. So what do? Lucky for me, the model was olive tone, her skin tone was kind of olive. What does that mean? That means that she was middle gray, right? So I didn't have to do much. I spot metered her face, and there you go. Everything else fell into place. I had, I don't know, maybe 10 lights in the studio that I was shining on the model to make sure that every single thing is lit properly on the clothing and so on and so forth. But reducing them, increasing them, reducing them, increasing them got easier because of the spot metering. And the second thing that worked out for me was the skin was olive, and that put me into middle gray, and that was the help. The next photograph she was wearing was all white with some black trim, and then she had a vest on which was dark. What did I do? I spot metered her face. That was the end of that, right? Because everything else fell into place, because that was a gray card as far as I'm concerned. So the blacks got into the black where there were details, the whites got into the whites where it was not blown out, and the art director was happy, and we moved on to the next one. The biggest challenge to me was separating the hair because it was dark, and then of course we had the black and white blouse in there, so I did exactly the same thing, spot metered her face, and we got it. But the challenge was that the art director said he doesn't want any backlight, but I had to have a separation. So for that I had to do spot metering on her hair and spot metering on the background, and then I had to light it in a way where there was a separation. So I had two lights controlling the background and the hair separate. So spot metering is the only way I personally think you can tell a story in your image. You guys are on this channel and it's wildlife photography, and I'm speaking about fashion. So let's just jump into wildlife and see how spot metering really helped me. So I'm going to talk to you about my shoot in India. Someone told me, hey Jas, we can help you out here and you can come to our farm and you'll be able to shoot lions. This was a private property, so I got a chance to get into the truck, go to the property. As soon as I saw my lioness, I got off the truck and I started to walk towards her. And the only thought that's coming to my mind is, yes, she is middle gray, but I also see everything around me is also kind of middle gray. And everything was kind of burnt out, almost the same color as her. So I took some shots over there. I took this one, and there what I did was I tried to separate the background from the lioness so that this way there would be attention straight to the lioness. But which meter did I use? I didn't use the evaluative meter. I didn't. I used the spot meter, because once I got the measurement of the lioness, I knew what I needed to do in terms of moving around in a position where I can change the lighting on the background, right? Because I didn't have the time to go measure the background, and I wasn't sitting there. She didn't walk into the spot. I walked into her spot, so to speak. And then to my luck, that she had, I think there were about 5 cubs. And slowly she walked, and then the cubs started to walk behind her. Can you imagine starting to follow a lioness that has cubs on foot? So my tracker stops me. He's like, she's going to come underneath this tree. So let's go to that tree and let's wait and let's see what she's going to give us. I start to measure everything, and to my advantage, everything was dark. Now I had already metered her, but I had metered her in a different light. I also know that she is medium gray. I also know that spot meter is my thing. I also know that spot meter will be able to allow me to change the lighting in the background if I move from side to side or front and back. Front I'm not going because it's a lioness. So I go to the spot and I wait, and then slowly the cubs come up, right? So the cubs come up. I take a measurement with spot meter, and I've already measured the tree. The tree is dark. So I say to myself, okay, great. The camera is telling me to do this, and that is middle gray. I'm not even going to change anything. I am just going to shoot. And that's what I did. I measured the cubs. They started climbing up the tree and going crazy with their cub play. And I measured the cub, spot metering, landed the shot. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Yes, the camera was a little bit fooled with the background. But again, the background didn't mean anything to me, right? Because I'd already taken the measure with spot metering of the lion cub, right? So the background didn't mean anything. If it was, which I think it did, blow out a little bit, I was absolutely okay with it, because creatively, the story that I was trying to tell was coming through as the background being blown out. I didn't want to move myself. So in this case, I kept the cub the darkest and I blew out the background. How could I do that? I could do that only with spot metering. One cub runs away from the tree and he starts to come towards me. This little cute little thing. I mean, you can't even imagine how cute this thing is. And it's exactly the same color as the grass. Or so I think. Now, my eyes are saying it's the same color. But guess what? Spot metered the darkest on his skin, and that was the ears, because that's where the shadows are. I was able to separate the background, which was almost the same color to my eye compared to the cub's skin. Would any other meter would be able to do that for me? I don't think so. Spot metering did that for me. Think of it this way. The smaller the number, the more light comes into your camera, correct? If spot meter is being measured with the surrounding and everything is falling into 5.6, then you turn your camera to 2.8 and you will be one stop brighter, and that's going to be what you're going to point to your subject and take a photograph. You're done. So let's see, what is the advantages of doing spot metering? So let's drop it down to, say, a 5.6. I mean, let's take it up to a 5.6, right? All you have to do is keep 5.6 as your brightest spot. And then you move to one side or the other side, making the background a little bit darker. Spot meter, where it's darker than 5.6, no, 5.6 is your brightest spot, and move yourself in a position where everything else is dark, and when the subject comes in, you go click, click, the metering is done. But if you do want to tell a story to your audience, then the only way to do it is to guide their eye within the frame, and the only way you're going to guide their eye within the frame if the light is different in different spots of your frame. And if it's not, they're going to look all over and they're going to be confused. And if they're confused, they're not into your photograph. If they're not into your photograph, they don't love your photograph. Spot metering is the only way you can tell a story. I hope this was helpful, guys, and I will speak to you guys soon with the next video. Thank you so much.